So then I said, where are the chickens?
And
Like,
here they
where are the chickens? And look, there they are, all around us, all showing up, just like that.
amazing.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Good morning. Look at all these wonderful men.
I'm going to gonna spotlight us here.
Okay.
There we go. There we go. There we go. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, gentlemen.
Trevor, it looks cold where you are.
It's colder where Dewey is, but I have a different relationship to the cold than Dewey does.
And it's 84 here,
that-
and I'm wearing my polar outfit.
That would be a true statement, Mr. T. And I'm literally sitting here thinking, should I take this
Don't get
outer shirt
naked.
off?
Do not get naked, Dewey
I'm not
Freeman.
going to the naked part.
He's Dewey Freeman. I'm Mark Sylvester. We're the Elder Council. Today we are live. And Dewey, I was at a lunch yesterday with a guy who was way above my pay grade intellectually. And I was holding my own in the conversation. It was incredible. I love putting myself in situations where I really have to pay attention and keep up. He asked a question, and I thought to myself, I'm going to bring this up tomorrow morning because it was really good. He said, how many people do you think understand the difference between thought and consciousness?
One.
I had to Google it. What is the difference between thought and consciousness?
In my world?
Yeah.
For me, consciousness is a whole body process.
Okay.
That begins with mostly my gut and spreads from there, not my head. Thought is when I go, oh, what is 2 and 2?
Mm-hmm.
That's my quick and dirty.
Yeah,
What did you come up with?
That essentially I was channeling my inner Dewey Freeman, and I said, well, what would Dewey say? And it was almost exactly that, but the consciousness, because I've been, we're studying the archetypes, right? So I've been reading Jung and studying, understanding consciousness and meditating on that a bit. And because I tend to be too much in my head, probably like all of us, right? Thinking too much. Part of being an improver is to stop thinking so much. And so it was just an interesting way to, kind of, he just looks up from his sandwich and he says, and he asks me that question. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a good one. So in these Saturday sessions where we're live, we like to take questions, live fire questions, and we love hot seats. And so with that in mind, all you need to do is raise your hand and then turn on your mic and ask us a question, and then we will we'll do our best to give you meaningful, thoughtful responses. Who wants to start? Who wants to start us off? See lots of guys here, Dewey. We've got 12.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah, it's
and
perfect.
All I would add to what Mark said is, well, first of all, any question is welcome.
Yeah.
Secondly is ask the questions that you are most afraid to ask. Somebody else. Ask the question that you go, fuck, if I ask that, someone's going to think I'm stupid. I'm going to embarrass myself, or I can't ask my partner, or those kind of things. And just in all transparency, Mark and I talk about on both online and offline about virtually everything.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we haven't touched on. So there's nothing that you can bring up that it's going to scare us off. So
All you need to do is raise your hand or just start talking, either one.
Mr. T.
Morning, gentlemen. This is not a like, oh my God, I can't ask this anywhere else, but this is something that's come up repeatedly throughout the month and 5 days that we've been working with the King archetype. And it's how many men, and in some regards, myself included, find this archetype overwhelming and intimidating.
Hmm.
One, because of the lack of modeling, that it just wasn't there, or the modeling was negative. But two, I think I'm more curious around the freeze that happens with too much responsibility being taken. It feels like culturally we have, or pop culturally even, with guys like Jocko and some of the more hardcore, not just military, but like leadership voices out there. It's like 100% responsibility for fucking everything. But I think that also is perhaps an oversimplification. And so I just come back to the original question. When you guys in your lives and you guys have empires in a number of different realms, we can call it, how do you deal with the balance between, fuck, it's my ship, if something's wrong with it, it's my responsibility, and taking too much responsibility for things that aren't in your control or your influence is often freezing or crippling? Does that question make sense?
It does.
Would you
It
guys mind
does.
riffing on that a little bit?
And actually, for the men that are on here, before we jump on that, which I think is a great question, would you do a 1-sentence or 2-sentence definition of the archetype so that everybody here is on the same page?
Definition of the
I
king?
yeah. What's a king archetype? And because I don't know if everyone in the chat has been following all this.
This is just on the spot, but I would say a patriarchal figure whose quest, for lack of a better term, is to bring order, thrivingness, if that's a word, and archetypally blessing to the people, but really a leader that's benevolent. So if I'm the king of my company, I'm not an ass. I can't be an asshole. I have to look out for the people. I have to make sure the company's going well, but not just the bottom line. So I'd say, Dewey, because it's men specifically, a male figure who is at the top of something in service to the people within that thing, and yet so responsible for the well-being, the growth, the expansion, the harmony. But then, of course, there's shadow pieces of that, or there's a flip side to that, but we don't have to dive into that. But I would just perhaps leave it at that. Like the good king is a leader with his heart.
Got it. Yeah.
Most of the time, he also has some warrior aspects to him, because you got to fuck some shit up to make sure your kingdom doesn't get taken over by the neighbors or whatever.
Yep.
Does that help?
That's perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I just wanted sort of that idea out there for everyone that was online. So you want to
take
give
it,
it a
Doc?
shot, Mark?
Well, as Trevor was asking the question, the word servant leadership came up in my head, and that's been thematic for me this week, because I wrote a paper for newthinking.com on temporal teams. Like when we pull together teams for a few minutes or a few hours or a few days, we pull them together. And the editor wrote me back and she said that she loved it because she doesn't see pieces about leadership that are about the other people. And that would I please write more about that? And I think as a great leader, it's in my experience, it's never been about me. It's always been about the other people that I'm leading. Always, since I was in junior leadership training as a Boy Scout at 14. It's always been I'm nothing if they're not trained and ready and excited, and I lead from behind, right? And so for me, Traver, that concept is it's in my DNA. And so when I hear people struggling with it, I honestly I hear that and I have a hard time because it feels natural. So I try to ask a lot of questions to see where people are stumbling. And I think, and Trey, Dewey, you and I have talked about this a lot. I think it's because they don't trust their ability to lead.
You just handed me a silver platter. Thank you.
That was a gift all wrapped up for you,
All
Doc.
wrapped up. Yeah, I think along that line, and the words you use, leading from behind, is incredible. That's an incredibly important process for me, and learning how to do that. And I'm not, when you spoke about people trusting their ability to lead, many times what I see is people don't trust themselves.
Exactly.
Versus,
yeah.
I don't see many people that go, well, I trust myself, but I don't trust my ability to lead. There's also 3 or 4 pieces, and one of the pieces that you brought up, Traver, that really strikes me is the responsibility piece. There's 2 things that come up for me when you speak that, and also when you were speaking, Mark. One is what does the word responsibility really mean? And what it really means is the ability to respond.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time when people feel overwhelmed by responsibility in that venue, so to speak, is carrying everything on your shoulders, which is a different process than finding the ability to respond to something. And there are some things as a leader that I don't have the ability to respond to. So that's one piece. So a lot of my work is, do I have the ability to respond to this? If so, how? I also have another layer in there of looking at whose business is this anyway? And this comes straight from Byron Katie, is there's your business, my business, and God's business. Most of the time when people get overwhelmed, they get out of their lane. They try to take care of everyone's business but their own. So those are 2 pieces that are layered in there for me. The third piece that really comes in for me is learning how to create an opening for somebody to move into.
Exactly.
Whether that be one specific person, a group of friends, like last weekend, Kimberly and I taught a 2-day class on my developmental model integrated with Wilhelm Reich's model on somatic model and body character structures. And the first hour to hour and a half of that class was about creating an opening for people, for them to step into. And once they did that, it was easy. And not only was it easy, but there was a fluidity to it that we didn't have to do anything with. And in fact, leading from behind was probably the best description, because after we created the opening, people started creating openings for us. And then we had to work to keep up, to be blunt about it. It was like, okay, here's 12 really smart people sitting here. They're creating openings for us. So in that process, and this is part of what you were talking about, I think, Trevor, with the, from leading from a beneficial place, it's like, how do we create openings so that we, I just hit on something here that I hadn't thought of. So for others, and virtually every being in the world wants to know where they belong and are they safe. And from that king archetype, I feel like my job is to, all of the things that we've talked about to this point, but my biggest piece is like, you have a place, you belong here, and you're safe. When we get that, when we have that happening, and we can provide that, a lot of really good things can happen. And when we started, interestingly enough, like Mark and I chit-chatted a bit, catching up with each other because we haven't spoken for a weekish. But the last thing before we signed on is, it's like, I got your back. Mark led that. And my response is, I got your back. And so it's like, we belong and we're safe. So when we can create that, then it's not a burden. Leading from that place, it's not a burden. It's actually, there's a joy in it and a fluidity to that process.
You touched on several things. The one that I have immediate experience with is this idea of creating safety in the group. And that's I believe that's part of the king's role, is to make sure that everybody is safe. And there's so many ways that shows up, and there's lots of, my favorite book on that is The Culture Code. And what is it about cultures of groups of people, that the ones that are high performing are ones where they know they're safe. Right. Every group interaction that I've been involved in for the last several years, we start by, in the group, I got your back. I got your back. I got your back. Do it tonight when we're on stage in Santa Barbara. I got your back. And it has, people have mentioned to us, first timers who come into our school, they've never felt that before. They've never had someone explicitly say that we're creating a safe space. And we add, for you to fail. Because we know you're doing something for the first time and you're not going to get it. And that's fine. We got your back. There's no judgment in that. There's just, hey, try stuff. Be, as you said, ask a question that feels a little scary, because there's no failure in this space.
So
Thank you both.
can I add one piece to that?
Please.
And Trevor, you mentioned a little bit about sort of the shadow or the places where this doesn't work so well sometimes. What I see, and I actually had a major experience this last summer where I was a participant in a group where the message was, yeah, you're safe, we got your back, et cetera, although it wasn't said explicitly. That's the message. And it wasn't safe. It wasn't a good place. And one of the things to be really, really careful of is, in that leadership role, is to be consistent, dependable, and congruent. When we are consistent, dependable, and congruent, then there's the fluidity that I was talking about earlier. When we're not consistent, dependable, and congruent, then people will respond to that. And that's when, as a leader, that the burden comes in. That's when the shit gets piled on our shoulders, because people are the initial trust that was there got broken. So, so that might be one of the pieces that shifts the responsibility from being the ability to respond, shifts from that to responsibility being burdensome.
Dewey, as you're saying that, I'm reminded of a time too many years ago in my software company when we had we'd merged with another company, and so we had the leadership of both. There were probably 10 of us, and we did an offsite here in Santa Barbara to kind of figure out how were we going to lead this new entity. One of the things that came out of that was we had, kind of like, what are our values as a team? What's our culture? Safety. What were the things that were important to us? And I said, I don't honestly give a fuck what you guys say. Is what do you guys do? That's how we're going to be judged, to your point, and to be congruent, to be, and so we came up with something that was unique at the time, at least to me. We called it observable behaviors, and that was more important. Like, how could we see our values in action? How could we live those values? What did teamwork look like? What did act like you in the company look like? What did care and compassion look like? And then each week we looked for examples of that. And when we got back together as in our weekly team meeting, we called out for 6 months. We obsessively looked for that so that we could bake that into our culture, so that people would say, God, well, you say you got my back, but you didn't have my back in that meeting. You kind of shut me down, or you no-butted me, or whatever it was. So I think people are always watching. I think as a father, your kids are watching you, how you react, we've talked about this before, right? So you're that modeling that behavior that you want others to live by. Let's I'm looking at our time. It's 20 after. I'm ready for another question. Just raise your hand, folks, or speak up, turn off your mute. Who do we got? Anybody? Oh, John, it's all you, sir.
Hey there. Can folks hear me?
Yeah.
I mean, several things you said, especially the last thing about kids jogs up. I mean, this came up in our call earlier in the week. I feel like I'm dealing with a challenge at home. I'm trying to figure out how to work through is sort of more basically like my wife and daughter are in conflict, teenage daughter. And some normal teenage stuff, push and pull on limits. But I think like I'm trying to figure out kind of my role in resolving that. And I think I think I deal with some general like conflict avoidance. So, I wish it would just go away, and wish they could just sort it out themselves. And then also worry that, any intervention is just gonna strain. Like, I actually have a pretty good relationship with my daughter, and kind of, worry about straining that and trying to intervene. So, but I think it's clearly like a challenge. I try to respond this week is like, there's unrest in the kingdom. What's my role in kind of bringing that to bear? And
teenager, John?
Teenager, yeah, 15. Yeah.
Love
and
15.
Again,
love 15. Their brains are as buff as their bodies.
Yeah. Generally a great kid, but it's also the phase of life we're in.
What's the conflict about?
I would say it's about like sort of control versus independence. Sort of about it started over some like, limits on like phone time and things like that. Homework wasn't done, and and now it's got like, I think my daughter's reaction has been to just kind of withdraw completely. Like, she's just kind of like not engaging.
You want to jump on that, Mark, or you want me to?
I'm reminded of one of our black belt instructors, Master Rick, and what he would say right now is this is an opportunity to train. Okay. And I think it's an opportunity for you to model peacekeeper is one thing, but it's a way for you to model for your daughter, especially, how do you navigate conflict? So rather than stepping back and, okay, girls, fight it out, you step in, and this is a teaching moment, absolutely a teaching moment of how you resolve conflict. And I think, in my opinion, it doesn't come from shutting down. And I used to be that guy, totally that guy. But now I actually, okay, this might be tough. I can do this. I trust, and I'm doing this in love. Let's just talk it out until, I mean, talk it out is kind of what we do. Family meeting time goes, and don't, and I would do it where we didn't set up something situational where we're at the table and we have opposing forces and all that stuff. Is let's go take a walk and do a walk and talk. And it's interesting when you're in a line and you're walking and you're talking out this way and you're not talking this way. Now that's against my, I want to look in your eyes and talk to you. But when you're in that high heat environment, just being able to go out and talk out in the universe seems to work. And I would add one other thing. My wife and I do this thing called What Else Do You Have? And when there's conflict, and it's usually if I'm helping pull some out, I'll say, well, what else do you have on not being able to use your phone? Well, it makes me rah, rah, rah. Okay. What else do you have? And when you ask that question, you're, as an interlocutor, you're not inducing any judgment on that. And it's important in your voice. Well, what else do you have on that? How else does that make you feel? What else do you have? Not even what you feel, but what else do you have? Oh, it makes me feel, okay. What else do you have? What else do you have? About the seventh answer, you'll start getting at the truth. And it will be, I would challenge all of you to do this. It's also called spring cleaning, because it's a way of, let's just get it all out. No, it doesn't matter, just because we have a safe environment, right? We're a family. And it's a chance to bleed off all the emotion and get to what's really there. And then you can talk about it. And if you're doing a walk and talk, you'd be surprised at what point you turn and hug it out, just organically. Doc?
All of what you said makes total sense. And what it sounds like you're talking about, is it John? Is that your name?
Yeah.
Is what do you do with the conflict between your wife and your daughter? Is that accurate? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
So if your wife can actually do what Mark just said, that would be great. Between your wife and your daughter. But let me talk about two things with families, and especially families with adolescents. An adolescent's job is to put together a value system. Up until early adolescence, we have a belief system. And what that means is that we believe what parents and society says. Their job is to rebel and sort of regurgitate all of the beliefs and sort of put them out there and then take in what they value. That's how we put together a value system. Most people enter their adult lives without a value system because they've never done that. So what that means is that your daughter actually has to rebel in a healthy way. And here's what I mean by healthy, because there's healthy and unhealthy rebellion. Healthy rebellion, both kinds of rebellion have consequences. And there has to be a consequence for it to be real rebellion. Like I see families come in and go, well, yeah, I smoke weed with my kid, so they're not rebelling. And it's like, that's not rebellion. Rebellion has to be put, they have to have something to push against. In healthy rebellion, the consequences last less than a year. And they're the things that happen that when they're 28 and the kid comes for Thanksgiving, everyone laughs about it. Unhealthy rebellion are oftentimes there's lifelong consequences. And what that means is that the kid is developmentally much younger. It sounds like your daughter's pretty on track. So she needs to rebel and she needs something to push against. Going back to the king archetype that we were talking about, is that pushing against has to be somebody that is able and willing to create an opening and make contact while being pushed on. That's probably the piece that your wife is struggling with, is that she's probably not quite sure how to create an opening and contact to let your daughter push against her. That's where you come in. Is the other thing in family dynamics is a parent should never be a moderator between the other parent and the kid. If there's a need for a moderator, get somebody from the outside, because all you're going to do is create a triangulation that is going to ruin your marriage. So if you want to ruin your marriage, go for that. I'm just saying. What needs to happen is for you and your wife to get on the same page, which might be you and your wife taking that walk that Mark was talking about, until you two can get on the same page, because your daughter needs you on the same page. What that very likely would be is someplace in between where your wife is right now and maybe where you're at. Again, I don't know enough details. And then to be able, because if you're not on the same page, if you're a moderator, then you create a triangle, and one of you, are you familiar with the trauma triangle, persecutor, victim, and rescuer?
Not in depth, but the sort of moderator problem and triangulation problem. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big fucking deal, because as soon as you come in, you're trying to rescue by moderating, but then you become the perpetrator, probably toward your wife. And so if you want to divorce and if you never want to have sex again, do that. So so the work, your initial piece of work is to get on the same page as your wife, so that both energetically and sometimes even physically, you two are saying, you know, sweetie, we love you with all of our hearts, and there are boundaries. If you want to rebel, go for it. That actually might be, and I actually say to kids, because I've spent thousands of hours working with kids, I literally say, I want you to rebel, and I'd love to see how creative you can be with it. And as soon as you do that, they go, fuck you. And then that's the rebellion. And following me? And so there's this whole piece in there. But that's the opening too. If I say to a 15-year-old boy or girl, it's like, hey, I'd love you to rebel. Give me the best you got. It shifts everything. And that's the opening, and that's the leadership. It's like, go for it. Go for the rebellion. Love it. In fact, what's really important to me is for you to learn how to argue and how to say no, because that's what's going to keep you from getting raped when you go to college. So let's help you learn how to do that. Let's help you learn how to rebel and say no and keep the relationship intact. And that's what you're going after with your wife and your daughter. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, thanks. It's super helpful.
That's why Dewey's the smart one and I'm the pretty one. That was awesome. That was awesome, sir.
So go take that, the walk that Mark was talking about, and what more do you got? What more do you got? Go do that with your wife. Do that first. Because in that process, one, she's going to really appreciate if you do that. And that's going to help the two of you really bond and connect. It sounds like you have a fairly decent relationship. Do that. That's a great idea. Once you get through all of that, then the two of you, again, in an incredibly kind way, sit down with your daughter and say, sweetie, we love you with all of our hearts. There's nobody in the world we love more than you. Let's see you rebel. Let's see what you got. Because you need to do that. We're going to help you do that.
Do we have our next question?
Perfect. Does that make sense, John?
Yeah, that was spectacular.
Yes, absolutely. That was just what I needed.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I thought all of us got a little bit out of that, or a lot out of that. Clark, welcome. What you got, bud?
Hey, good morning. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate Trevor bringing up Jocko. I've been reading Jocko. I've been reading Dave Goggins, and feeling like those guys go hard every day. I've been feeling like that's what I need to do in order to be able to do anything close to what you, Mark, and Dewey and Trevor, what y'all do. You know, like I should be playing music 4 to 6 hours a day. I should be going to the gym an hour and a half to 2 hours, 5 days a week. I need to go to jujitsu 4 or 5 times a week. I should be journaling and reading and meditating every single day. And I'm exhausted and I'm kind of miserable right now from pushing as hard as I've been trying to push.
That's because I was going to make a smart ass comment.
You really?
It's like, come on, Clark.
Yeah, I know, right? What's wrong with me? No, I mean, I'm not doing well trying to push this hard every day, but it's still really important to me that I be growing my kingdom, and that I be, to bring it back to the king archetype, be expanding my empire. And at the end of the day, I'm just feeling like really stressed and drained, and wondering, like, I don't, how in the world how do I stay consistent with this? And I'm like, I just don't think I'm thinking about this the right way. I don't think my idea of what hard work means is accurate, because I'm not getting the results that I want.
That's a biggie. You want to jump on that, Mark?
I'm going to take a crack at this one.
Take a crack at that one.
First, Clark, if you could do me a favor, if you could write the word should down on a piece of paper.
Okay.
And then I'd like you to cross it out, and I don't ever want to hear it again. Please. Please. Don't get should what? Just get rid of that word. If you hear yourself say it, just go, okay, Mark said not to say that. Please. Okay. just get rid of that word. That's number one. Number two is you have overwhelmed yourself with a to-do list that's fucking gonna kill you, in my opinion. And so I'm a big fan of baby steps. Big fan of baby steps. And until you get to where, you're good at it. You don't just you've stepped into the ring with a bunch of heavyweights and going, I want to be like that, and can't keep up. Not yet. You're just getting going. So I would baby step the thing. And if you've got, I don't know how much time you've allotted to all of these things, you can't change all of it. Pick a thing. Would be my deal. Pick a thing. To me, for me and you, it would be music. Pick your music, because that's going to get in your body. It's the thing you love. It's the thing that's going to make you happy and give you the energy and joy to be able to do the other things and do the music. And if you believe you need to practice 4 or 5 hours a day, and then do that. But pick a thing, not all the things. And then when you're feeling comfortable with that, add another thing. Otherwise, you're no good to yourself, and much less anybody else, if you're overwhelmed and beat up and just Doc.
Thank you.
I was just looking at some stuff in the chat. there's a number of very, very famous horse trainers, and they're one of them in particular, when he was asked what's the quickest way to train a horse, his answer is very slowly. Everything that you do, whether it be practicing your guitar, whether it be going to the gym, doing jujitsu, after everything that you do, you need a recovery time. Everything. When we are learning a new skill, going more than 30 to 45 minutes is counterproductive on a neurological level and a brain development level. When we work out heavy at the gym, we need a minimum, at least in my world, a minimum of a day recovery in between. When we do a jujitsu session or class or lesson, however you want to say it, we need time for our muscles to recover. Part of what I would say to you is you have 3 or 4 things going. Make one day focused, say, on music. Make the next day focused on jiu-jitsu, the next day focused on the gym, but find a pace in there. Our muscles need time to recover, our brain needs time to recover. When we do something new and we're in that recovery stage, our brain's still working, it's still growing what's called dendrites. I was a nationally ranked Nordic skier in my 20s. And I would, in the winter, well, in the summer, I did skate skiing to be in shape, but 90% of my workouts were 30 to 45 minutes. And like twice a week, I would do long workouts, and I would do heavy workouts, and I would do aerobic workouts. But keeping up that high level of push is not going to work for anybody. All that does is break our bodies down and it'll break our minds down. So and the other part that I would say to you is right now, I mean, and when I say this with a lot of respect for you, Clark. You're in your early 30s. It's not your job to create a kingdom yet. That you're not there. And that's not personal. I would say that to anybody in their early 30s. That's not what this is about. What this is about for you is becoming competent in whatever that is that you want to become competent in, whether it's your music or whether it's jiu-jitsu or whether it's whatever that is. And I even do the same thing. I've started working with Robert Wunderlich on jiu-jitsu. Well, I do it in private lessons because I don't want to get beat up by 20-year-olds, number one, and broken in half. And number two, it's like, I'm not there to become proficient. I can't imagine that I'm going to be more than a white belt ever in jiu-jitsu. But that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the process of doing it and the camaraderie of doing it with somebody that cares about me and I care about them. And so that's where you need to be right now. Work with competency, work with and on competency in those different arenas that you're playing with. They're all great arenas. But you also need recovery time in all of those arenas to learn. So give yourself that time. the other thing, and Kimberly and I were talking, and is that so much of our lives, and especially for men, is we have forgotten how to play. I mean, like play, not like play guitar or play. We've forgotten how to just go fucking play. And let that get built into your life, so that that'll be the biggest way that fastest way you can recover. That's what gives us the juice to go on.
Dewey, that's
Okay.
why we do improv 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. And it's something we do together. Kimberly this week coming home, she says, I'm so glad we do this together. It's so much fun because we're
Yeah.
out of our head and we're laughing, we're playing, we're just being silly, and it's super fun. We've got another short 15 minutes. Let's go to Brad. Brad's had his hand up for a while there. Brad, what you got, buddy?
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if you guys could share your thoughts on the idea or theme of sovereignty within the context of the king archetype and within men's work, because you know, the scenario is that if somebody comes out of, you know, a bad breakup, codependent relationship, we encourage them to be sovereign in a sense and work on themselves and date themselves. I've heard it time and time again, but you know, there's this light and dark in that idea of sovereignty as well. So what are your thoughts?
Doc, why don't you go first here?
Well, actually, Brad, say a little bit more about what you're talking about. Just
I think there's a loose definition around the idea of sovereignty, and Traver said it time and time again, like they're all just words, right? We almost need a men's work glossary. You know, if there was like a
that'd be
bigger
true.
a bigger idea. There's an awesome marketing idea for you, Traver.
Yeah, hey Clark, could you jump on that in between all the other shit you do?
Yeah, like a Wikipedia version of the men's work glossary. But yeah, I mean, like I've done it, and I've encouraged other guys to do it as well, just to become a sovereign person and work on themselves, and not jump into another relationship coming out of something that was
Got it.
You know, you have wounds from it, right?
Yeah.
But the pure definition of sovereignty is a little bit more, it's closer to shadow than it is the ideal, you know, king archetype.
Right. Want me to go, Mr. Mark?
Please, sir.
So in the world of work and men's work, etc., the term codependent gets used a lot, and it gets used mostly inappropriately. Codependent, that word actually means being addicted to someone else's addiction. That's what that word means. And it's part of why people never quite know what it is. It's like people go, well, I'm not going to be codependent, or so-and-so is codependent, but that's not really what's happening. It's not necessarily an addiction. What really is happening, at least in my view, is a thing that from a Gestalt perspective we call confluence. And what that means is that we don't really have boundaries to be able to touch another. And many of you have probably heard me talk about contact, and what contact is it's a moment in time where we're attuned and we're present, and our boundaries, our emotional, physical, energetic, and our spiritual boundaries touch another. And what confluence is where those boundaries get so intertwined with another person that we actually lose who we are. Does that make sense? Just quick and dirty. And so what the process is for me, and when I'm working with people, is working toward not being confluent versus being sovereign. Because we can't find ourselves if we're confluent with another being, and that's oftentimes what happens. Now, there's times where it's healthy to be confluent, like when we're making love or a spiritual process with another. But it's like, how do we actually have boundaries that we actually can stand in for ourselves and be able to have contact with ourselves versus our lives or our well-being being dependent on being confluent with another person. So it's literally learning how to say no with what I would say is a grounded no. Does that make sense? And in response, so the actual work for me is truly looking at how we make contact, how we inhibit contact. Do we have a choice around those things? And how we do or don't do that. And there's 5 ways that we break contact primarily. One is confluence, one is deflection, one's projection, one's retroflexion, which is where we turn in on ourselves, and then one is our introjects, where they're all the messages that we have around how to make contact. So I suggest that people take more of a look at those things, because there's something we can grab hold of versus just say, oh, well, I'm going to be sovereign.
Dewey, would you give us those 5 again? I want to turn that into a show. So
okay, perfect.
If you give us those 5 slowly.
Okay, interjects, which are the messages that we receive without assimilating them. Projection is another one. Another one is deflection. Another one is retroflexion, and another one is confluence.
And retroflexion is?
Retroflexion is where we turn a feeling into ourselves. Instead of saying, wow, Mark, I'm really pissed, it's like, oh, fuck, I never should have done that. So I turn it in on myself instead of putting it where it belongs. And so so being sovereign to me is learning how to truly make contact with ourselves and with other people by choice, and well, literally by choice, knowing what it is and doing it by choice, doing that by choice. Does that make sense to you? And does it help at all?
Brad?
Yeah, I just wanted your insight, and there's always some sort of beautiful, elegant framework that comes out of Dewey's mouth. So
Well,
again, the smart one and the pretty one. There you go. We have
just so you know, I just make shit up.
Oh, always.
No.
but yeah. That's the certainty principle. So his certainty around that definition was so strong, it was palpable. Whether he was making it up or not, he was certain. The person is most certain is always going to prevail. We have time for one last one.
Let me just say that
yes,
I did make that up, and it's taken me 50 years of life work to be able to get to that. So and that's the piece I was talking earlier with Clark about competency.
See?
So yeah,
let's go to Carlos as our cleanup question here. What do you got, Carlos?
Thank you, gentlemen. You guys kind of touched upon some of what I was processing and wanting to share with Clark in the realms of the kingship and kind of just slowing down. And Trevor's side, the big exhale when you told him he's in his early 30s. His focus isn't to build kingship. I just turned 26 and my focus has been solely kingship. and then I get trampled with love and falling in love, and then codependency. So you kind of also answered a bit of my question with Brad, and it's literally been my studies all these past couple months of codependency, what's going on, childhood wounds, all these different things. So I find that I continue to be between two worlds of wanting to build an empire, and falling in love and having a woman. Yet I find my attachment style is very anxious and avoidant. So I latch on to women, and usually it's women older than me. She's 33. The one before her was 35. The other one before her was closer to 37. So I just wanted some perspective on finding a balance between that king. I'm assuming that's the king and the lover. Haven't got too much into the lover, but just using that as like a framework of what I'm observing within myself.
Well, I would probably start off with saying something similar. I said to Clark, let go of trying to build your kingdom. That'll happen. That's a natural process. And as you become more competent in everything that you do, that'll happen naturally. And the truth is it takes time. That takes time. Like decades time. One of the things with men that we do is we want to go from A to Z in like a half a fucking second, and we skip over everything else. So that's one piece. The other piece, and I'm a little bit hesitant to say this because I don't know you. So when I'm saying this, please take this with a grain of salt, okay? When you speak to the attachment piece of anxious and avoidant, I think is what you said. And then you're talking about being with older women. My gut said, inside me has gone, be careful. You might be looking for a mom instead of a partner. So be really careful of that, because and let yourself sit with that a little bit and settle into that a little bit, because those relationships don't work out so well. And just to be unbelievably blunt, we're not designed to fuck our mothers. We're designed to be partners with women who we relate to on a adult to adult basis. And so take a really deep look at that and what you're looking for in that, because I mean, just the vibes they get off of you, it's like you're an incredibly good man. It's clear that you're kind. It's clear that you have a level of sensitivity of picking up energy. Let yourself really drop into that, and double check to see if you're looking for a mom in those relationships, because if you are, they probably won't work out so well.
Well, yeah, none of them have, and that's been the process these past couple of days.
Yeah.
So today I rise on my audiobook.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, you got.
I'm glad we're finishing up on a smile. Everybody, thank you so much. We've got a great group of people here, and I appreciate all of the questions that you asked and the opportunity for us to give you a he said response on all of these. Thank you so much. We'll be back next month at the end of the month, and I will be in Austin for the first time. So I'm super looking forward to that, and meeting you guys and getting to give you all a hug. Mr. Freeman, thank you so much. I appreciate your friendship.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
As always, what a great way to kick off the weekend. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you, sir. Love you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Appreciate
you, T.
Love you guys.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Love you guys.
Love
Bye.
you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.